Morning YouTube. Just going to respond to someone's comment on my video this morning, and I just figured, alright, 252 amps, not bad for a Sunday, hey. Anyway, yeah, so I had a comment that asked if I could do a breakdown on the cost of the battery. I assume it's the battery because they just said what did it all cost. So we'll focus on the battery. If you want to know more, I'm happy to share that information. So yeah, we got 3 shelves. There's 32 cells per shelf, and they're 302 amp hour cells. They're in a 16S 2P configuration, and they cost. For some reason, the Alibaba people, I got it through I think it's QSO, or Amy Peng. I'd be happy to share her contact details in the description. I'm not affiliated with them, by the way. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I'm just a dude taking videos at home. So the battery was, sorry, my bloody notes have just dropped off. Each shelf was $4,216 US DDP paid. So if I break that down per cell, that is $131.75 US per cell. So at the time that worked out to 197 Australian dollars per cell. Yeah, that's it, right? Like that's actually fairly cheap. Now there's a hidden cost in buying these cells yourself, right? And that's all the work that you've got to do. 1, you're taking the risk, and 2, you've got to balance them yourself, and that takes time, right? Don't kid yourself. I've got 2 50 amp chargers, 3.65 volts, so like 175 watts, let's say, going into the battery. If you've got to charge this many cells, it takes a long time. So that extra money that you might spend by buying cells from someone else is usually worth it if they've made the effort to top balance them all for you, and then they carry the risk of something being wrong with them. So my suggestion to anybody who's watching this is don't buy the cells yourself. Go and get them from someone you can get a warranty from. Alt-Tech comes to mind straight away. Prices are reasonable. The amount extra you'll pay instead of buying them yourself is totally worth it to be able to take it back to them and say something's wrong with it and get them to replace it. Anyway, that's the battery. So that worked out to, at 197 AU, they worked out to roughly $21,000 for the cells. Then I've got the steel in the rack, and it was all made out of scrap, so it doesn't look like it, but yeah, actually it looks pretty good, I think. But the guys down at Armadale Steel, which is the local steel supplier where I live, they had a bunch of offcuts and material that had been cut wrong for a job. So I had 4 lengths, 50 by 50, 59 a length, so $236 for the 55 by 50. There was 2 lengths of C-channel, so the shelf is made out of C-channel, and that's why there's a gap. It's hard to see, but there's a gap in between the shelves, and there's backing plate that the battery sit against, and the compression plate is also made out of C-channel. The threaded rods, so that the C-channel was $50 a length, and I had 2 lengths of that full lengths though, they were like 8 metre lengths or something, and then 4 wheels for $40 a wheel. The rest of it is just crap that I had lying around. Like, well, these weren't lying around, they were just from Bunnings, but they didn't actually have enough for me to finish it, which is why some of them are in stainless and some of them are not. So these things were $6 a length, and there's 12 of them. Little wing nuts were like $9.95 for a pack of 10. I needed 2 packs, so I threw some of them away. The cells came with bus bars, but because of the way that I've configured the battery, I had to add extra bus bars in. Got the JK BMS system. These are the 2 amp charge with RS485 and CAN bus. Sorry, 2 amp active balancer. They're 200 amp charge, 200 amp discharge. They can do bursts of 350 amps. Not that I'm ever going to need that unless there's a short going on somewhere. So, and they were, where's the price for those things? $228 a piece. I believe they've actually dropped down in price now. I think there's some competitors on the market, so you can probably get them a little bit cheaper. But total cost, as near as I can tell, was under $22,000 for 90 kilowatts of power. So I'm pretty happy with that. Oh dear. Well, I'm not sure what that was, but whatever it was, it's dead now. There's a burn mark on top of the bolt. Holy shit. Well, that's not good. There's literally ash in there. Oh, don't go in the battery cage, eh? That's funny. Where was I? Oh, I forgot now. That's right, we're talking about the compression. Yeah, so look, I've compressed it, but it's a, what do you call it? It's just an obligatory compression. It's not, I don't 100% believe that it needs to be there, but, you know, whatever. There's enough people talking about it that I've made the effort to compress it. This is the interface cable for the CAN or the RS485. I do have these little posts here on each shelf for the negative lead. What I intend to do is put a fuse there. I'm not happy with the idea that the fuses are all up here. There is a cable that length could be nicked, something could go wrong, and there would be no protection. So what I'd really like is for the final leg there to actually be a fuse, and potentially stick a fuse on the other end there just in case. That's still dangerous, right? Like if you only had the power from, we just got to ask this guy, if you only had the power from one half of this shelf, it would still be like dangerous. It could still do some significant damage. It could cause a fire. I'm not going to fuse all the way along because that would be silly. Maybe I could do it in 12 volt chunks and just have a fuse at each quarter, I'm not sure. But what I do want to do is cover the whole rack up with plastic sheet so you can see into it, so that sort of thing doesn't happen. Yeah. Oh, anyway, I've jumped around all over the place, which is typical for me. If any, you know, for people who know me, that would be a familiar thing. But hopefully that gives you a sort of an idea of what it cost and the effort that went into it. That's the bit that no one thinks of. They look at the cost and they go, oh, yeah, it'll be cheap. I'll just buy a battery, I'll buy the cells and I'll make it myself. Well, this took weeks, man. Like weeks and weeks and weeks. And if it's not, break it down to the like cost benefit, you might be better off just paying somebody else to do it. You know, like I couldn't fucking believe it. These are the I'll get rid of all my trash I've got floating around here. These are the power supplies I used. They output 50 amps at 3.2 volts. That's not a lot. It's 150 watts. And when you've got 90 kilowatts and you're charging it at 300 watts, if the batteries came 45% full, you've got to put 45 kilowatts in at 300 watts to balance this thing out. And you need time to, it doesn't maintain that 150 watts the entire time. That's a burst, or yeah, it could be as high as close to 200 watts, let's say. But you only get that full power when the battery cell is low. Once it gets above 90%, the current drops off, right? So then it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to charge these batteries up. So if you sort of go into a place like Altec and you go, how do you, well, Altec's cheap, so we'll use somebody else as an example. You know, how do you justify the cost of these batteries? Well, labour time for starters. Not only do you have to import them, you've got to take the risk of importing them, and there's all the insurances and overhead of running a business. But then you've got to put these things on a shelf somewhere and you've got to charge them over a very, very long period of time, and that is time consuming. So when you go into someone's business and you're like, oh, I want battery cells and I want them cheap, you're probably not going to get them that cheap because of the effort that goes into preparing them for use. So my suggestion to anybody is don't do this unless you're, one, you know what you're doing, because somebody could get hurt. You could waste a lot of money, like financially as well as safety implications. But the cost in time is significant. So if you think you're going to save some money, everything you save in dollars, you will have to give back in effort. So it's something I hadn't thought through before I built the battery. I just had at it like everything here. It's, you know, me and the boys would have a couple of beers and be like, how cool would it be if we built X and then this happens, and it all looks half finished because we never bother to come back and actually finish it. But anyway, that's the breakdown on the battery. Hopefully that sort of opens people's eyes that this battery was cheap for us to buy the parts, but the considerable amount of effort that had to go into building it, it took weeks of my life up. You know, just that we couldn't use the kitchen table. My partner was furious about that because I had battery cells all over it and there was wires everywhere. So you wouldn't want small kids running around. In fact, that in itself is dangerous, right? I was fortunate enough that I work away and no one was using that space, and I was able to, you know, secure the batteries there. But anyway, look, I'm going to leave it at that because give me half the opportunity. I'll keep waffling on. Cheers for watching.